meetings I would like to call to order on this July 11th. The time is 9:01 a.m. Public hearing for the City of Tampa Historic Preservation Commission. Welcome, everyone. I am Dominique Cobb, your chair for Historic Preservation Commission. If you are here to present a request, please be thorough but concise. At the microphone, identify yourself and your relationship to the project before beginning your presentation. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Next, the staff will present the staff report with another swearing in, and we will then ask for public comment. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take your time and to summarize your comments before your 3 minutes. They may go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal, and the commissioners will have a chance to ask questions to the applicant and also the staff. After that, the public hearing will then be closed. The only comments will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decisions based on the city ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, and the testament given at the public hearing. The HPC can only act on the items that are within specific jurisdiction and jurisdictional responsibility. Owners and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. Next, we will have the introduction of our commissioners, starting from my right.
Tom Pluckon, University of South Florida.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Patricia Ortiz.
Good morning, Carrie Ann Canch.
Vivian Samaga.
Susan Swift, Boggs Engineering.
Missy Shukra. Thank you, commissioners, for joining us today. Also, we will introduce our staff. We have Dennis Fernandez, Elaine Lunn, Amita Owen, Alexis Gomez, and Ligo Kamara Pattis Mackle. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
And now we will have the reading of the minutes from May 16, 2023.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, commissioners. Can you, do we have to do visible? If you can vote yes or no by the show of hands, yay. No, right? The motion passed with all commissioners. Thank you. Next, we will read our announcements.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this morning's Historic Preservation Commission hearing, and welcome to our applicants and the public as well who are joining us. I did want to begin by letting you know about a couple events that are going on for Archives Awareness Week. Archives Awareness Week is taking place this week, mainly hosted by our Archives and Records staff. They did a great job celebrating Tampa's 136th birthday from 1887 until this year. And as part of the celebration, there's a number of opportunities for the public to engage in some interesting conversations about the history of the city. There's some opportunities in here for public presentations, and there's even an opportunity in here to kind of record and document your memories of the city's past. So feel free to share that. It's also on the city's website at tampagov.net, and we hope to see you at some of the events. As part of that celebration, I did include a flyer in your packets for the unveiling of 2 historic markers. We've been talking a lot about celebrating the city's history, and one way to do that is to tell the story through historic markers. And so we have 2 that are being unveiled or dedicated this Thursday, one for the Jackson House and one for the Scrub neighborhood. So those are both in close proximity to the Robert Saunders Library where the event will be held for kind of like obvious reasons with the weather. It's a little challenging out there to do something outdoors right now. So the event's going to be held at the library, and there'll be a lot of city officials and community leaders in attendance. We hope to see you there for that as well. It's at 11 a.m. And with that, we'll kind of move on through the agenda, beginning with the disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, which our legal counsel will lead.
Good morning. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the Legal Department. Will the commissioners please state whether or not they've had any conflicts, whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
No.
Thank you. Furthermore, will the commissioners please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
None.
Thank you.
With that, we are ready for our swear-in. Anyone in the public who's going to be presenting or giving testimony during the hearing this morning, if you could please stand and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And with that, we are ready for our first case. That is HPC 2023-02. And Elaine Lund with our staff will present a PowerPoint for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. This morning we have a presentation for you for the Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse at 115 Columbia Drive. That's HPC 2023-02. It's being presented to you this morning for consideration for recommendation to City Council for local historic landmark designation. This is the present-day aerial map showing you the location of the Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse on Davis Islands. It's located, as I said, on Columbia Drive, and it is just at the western edge of the Marjorie Park Marina. It's currently owned by the City of Tampa and is in use by the Tampa Police Department. It was originally constructed as a gatehouse for a yacht basin on about a 55-acre chunk of park that was donated by the island's developer to the City of Tampa. This is the 1931 Sanborn map showing you the location of the gatehouse. You can see there it is just adjacent to the yacht basin off Columbia Drive. It's shown in yellow, indicating that it is a wood frame structure. And you can see where the, I believe that says wooden deck was then leading out into the water. In the 1920s, Davis Islands was little more than two mudflats, big and little grassy islands. D.P. Davis was a developer who had seen some successful real estate development in Miami, but made his way to Tampa because of the very competitive market in the Miami area. D.P. Davis teamed up with Burke's Hammer, a local developer, and bought the underwater islands from the City of Tampa. As part of the purchase agreement, Davis promised to stay 700 feet off of the Bayshore Boulevard, finance the construction of the bridge connecting to Davis Islands, and deed 55 acres as Marjorie Park to the City of Tampa. Today, the Tampa's Municipal Hospital and the Davis Islands Tennis Clubs are part of Marjorie Park. The yacht basin and its slips were originally built to accommodate about 30 vessels, and they opened for the public in 1927. The construction of Davis Islands itself began in 1924, as is circa 1926, after the after the land had been dredged from the bay and built up, and the roads have been constructed throughout the island. You can see some of the initial buildings that were constructed in 1925 and 1926 here. This is an article from 1928 lauding the city's new pavilion at the Yacht Basin, and there's a photograph of the still existing structure, much as it looks today. Davis's vision was for a year-round luxury community, and he chose the Mediterranean revival style of architecture to bring visual continuity to the community, and that was in use for the commercial and residential buildings alike. Davis referred to his style of choice for the island as Venetian, and you can see with the way it was constructed, the several canals that were formed within the island to give plenty of properties waterfront access. Davis called in an architect called Martin Hampton from Miami. He had assisted with several of the 1920s land boom developments in that area. Franklin O. Adams was Hampton's representative who oversaw the construction of several of the local projects in the area and on Davis Islands. Hampton was well-versed in the Mediterranean revival stylings. He served on the Beach Park Development Architectural Review Board, which was another Mediterranean revival-themed subdivision in Tampa. And he personally designed 29 of the more than 100 buildings constructed on Davis Islands between 1925 and 1935. The designs not only included the Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse, but also the above-ground municipal swimming pool, which is now known as the Roy Jenkins Swimming Pool. The gatehouse is a one-story frame structure. It was built on a concrete slab foundation, and the exterior, while it is wood frame, is clad in textured stucco. It's a 3-bay rectangular building, symmetrically massed, and it has a central pedimented pavilion and arched passageway flanked by the flat roof wings. Clay barrel tiles cover the pediment parapet. The building features casement windows with wrought iron access, and those include the wrought iron grills that cover the 6 light windows on the east facade. The Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse is significant for its association with Davis Islands, a product of the Florida land boom in the mid-1920s, and is significant for its association with architect Franklin O. Adams. It also reflects the completeness of D.P. Davis's plan, which included every facility for resort living on Davis Islands, from yacht basin to golf course, all in the Mediterranean revival style. The facility was constructed as part of Marjorie Park, the 55-acre recreational area on the northeast side of the island. The building and its Mediterranean revival style was recently rehabilitated, and it maintains its historic integrity. Therefore, this historic resource is significant under National Register Criterion A in the area of architecture. That's also relates to the portion of the Tampa City Code under Section 27257A21, and under A22 in the in the areas of recreation and community planning, and the areas of recreation and the area of architecture, which is A22. There. The City of Tampa, as I stated, owns this structure, and the application was submitted by the Tampa Police Department and authorized by the mayor of the City of Tampa, and the public notice was complete. Staff finds that the property meets the criteria for local designation found in Section 27257A12 and C of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, and recommends that the Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse at 115 Columbia Drive be recommended to the City Council for local historic landmark designation. We have with us this morning a representative from the Tampa Police Department who can speak a little more to this particular application. And then I will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long.
Good morning. My name is Jay Reese. I'm a corporal with the City of Tampa Police Department's Marine Unit. We just recently got the building signed over to us from Parks and Rec, so we now occupy the entire building. It serves as our main office for patrols throughout the city of Tampa. I came to the Marine Unit in 2021. Our building was in pretty rough shape. We did a rehabilitation project. We put it back to its original design. At some point, the doors had been moved to the water side. We put it back to the original construction where the entry doors are now in the interior breezeway, and we'd like to continue with making it more like what it originally was. We recently secured funding to add a dock where the original dock came out from underneath the archway. But I think this building has a great piece of history for Tampa. She did a great job covering. One of the cooler aspects was Mr. Davis actually disappeared after the housing crash in 1928, roughly. He disappeared at sea, which is kind of a cool thing for the Marine Unit to have their office based out of one of his buildings. We support this project, and we would like to maintain the building as best as possible to how it was originally built. And I appreciate your time this morning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any public comment? Okay. If not, we will close this part for public comment and speak with the commissioners. Commissioners? All right, seeing none again.
Well, I would just make a comment that, wow, this building is one of the more modest representations of Mediterranean revival architecture. Its significance in the history of the island and in the development of the island, I think, warrants its being designated as an historic structure.
I guess I could add to that. I think that it's interesting and appropriate that this building be used by the Tampa Police Department. This land was donated to the city, as part of a condition of zoning approval, I guess, which is interesting. And I think it's appropriate that it be used for civic purposes. So I'm ready to make a motion. Any other comments before?
Any other comments, commissioners?
I would just say kudos to the city and the Tampa Police Department for making this investment.
All right, well, we would like to go ahead and, you have a motion for us?
Okay. All right. Just for the record, my name is Patricia Ortiz, and I'd like to make a motion to recommend Tampa City Council approve this request to designate the Marjorie Park Marina Gatehouse located on 115 Columbia Drive for local historic landmark designation. I'd like to go on further to say that this designation is supported by the criteria A, parts 1 and 2, and C, and I could go further into that if you'd like, but just based on parts, I guess my question to legal is, would you like me to read all of this? Okay, yes. Okay, part A. Part 1, the building or site was constructed or achieved its significance during the period of historic significance as delineated in the National Register of Historic Places, and it has a quality of significance in our local history, architecture, and culture, which is present on Davis Island. Additionally, I would go on to say that this structure is associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, that it is associated with the lives of persons significant in our past, and that it embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, and method of construction. Furthermore, it is consistent with criteria C, in addition. Yeah, okay, so. Yes, in addition, the owner, the city of Tampa, supports this designation. that concludes my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And just to clarify,
Yes.
you've removed criteria B from your motion, correct?
Yeah, I have. I think A and C hits the mark.
A second.
Commissioners, can we show in the, I guess by saying aye, if we are in agreement with the motion to move forward to make this a designation?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we move forward with the motion to approve the Majory Park Gatehouse for 115 Columbia Drive. Thank you. Next on the agenda, Ms. Elaine Lund. Thank you.
Commissioners, the next item on our agenda will be the redesignation of a contributing structure in the Tampa Heights Local Historic District. If you give me just a moment, I'll get that presentation up for you. There we go. This property, now located at 1807 North Morgan Street, is in front of you today under consideration as item number HPC 2023-05 for its redesignation of a relocated contributing structure in a local historic district. Originally located at 1808 North Morgan Street, this structure was moved from the site shown here in green to the site shown in red. This is the most recent aerial map that we have for the site, and you can see the building at its former location at 1808 North Morgan Street before it was moved across the street. This is the 1928 Sanborn map sheet, number 57F, showing again the sending and receiving locations for the structure. You can see the actual footprint of the building there and the parcel shown in green. It's a wood frame structure with a wraparound porch and indicated D for dwelling at that time. And it's now in use as the home of a law firm office. Again, showing the original and current locations in green and red. This is our Tampa Heights Historic District map. You can see on the zoomed in portion of the map there that it is just within the boundaries of both the national and local historic districts, with the national district shown in blue and the local historic district shown in red. You can see the footprint of the former residence and the green rectangle there, and it's shaded in, showing that it is a contributing structure to the district. These are photographs of the building on its original site from 2021 at 1808 North Morgan Street. It's a two-story building with distinctive craftsman bungalow characteristics. The building conveyed its original appearance, which is why it was chosen as a local, a contributing structure to the local and national historic districts. This is the building during the relocation across the street in 2022. And then in 2023, the building was, is shown on its current site at 1807 North Morgan Street. It's currently undergoing rehabilitation, and which was approved by the Architectural Review Commission, as was the relocation. We find that the building meets the criteria for redesignation as a relocated structure. That's in section 27261B of the city's Code of Ordinances. We have an owner-initiated application for a relocated building within a historic district. The application was complete. The criteria in this section of the code refers us to National Register Bulletin 15 to determine whether it continues to contribute to the integrity of the Tampa Heights Historic District. It was built within the period of significance and embodies this distinctive characteristics of the type of architecture represented throughout Tampa Heights, and it maintains its historic relationships to its site and setting, thereby meeting the criteria in National Register Bulletin 15. Therefore, staff recommendation is that this board approve the request to redesignate the status of this building as contributing and to amend the Tampa Heights Historic District building inventory. We have with us today the owner of the property who will come and speak a little further to his request. Mr. Schomburg?
My name is Harvey Schoenbrunn, and I own the building, owned it for many, many years. And when I sold the property, there was my law office, which was my pediatrician, Dr. Philip Adler's office. That has now been demolished. But the city said that I could not demolish this structure, even though it was very old and in poor shape. And so I decided I wanted to stay in the neighborhood since I was born on the corner at the old St. Joseph's Hospital and had been in this neighborhood for 35 years. My mother was born a few blocks north of it, so I moved the building across the street on a lot and a half that I owned. And we've been in the process of renovating, doing everything that we need to do to fix the building up to where I mean, it's taken a lot because it had a lot of termites, had a lot of rot, and putting a building that's 3.5 feet above the ground on a basement that I had constructed because there wasn't room on the property for me to put my closed files. So we decided to use a basement, but it was placed on top of the basement with a lot of structural work being done, and now is undergoing a complete renovation, you know, new roof, new electrical, new plumbing, new siding, total renovation of the interior, which we discovered the subfloor was all rotted, had to pull that out. We keep discovering things as we go along, but it should be completed. J.O. Delato, the contractor, which is a big company, usually they don't do little projects like this, but they thought it was interesting, said that by October 30th, we'll have a certificate of occupancy. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be an absolutely beautiful building and a credit to the neighborhood. We've chosen the colors navy blue and gray, and even the parking lot will be gray pavers. We are 10 feet away from the 15 four-story Victorian townhomes that are on the corner of 7th Avenue and Morgan. So we're 10 feet away from them. We have 15 spaces. They have a total of 4 guest spaces for their 15 townhomes. So I think I'll probably be seeing them in my parking lot. But we're very excited about it because when I retire from the practice of law, my daughter will continue to practice law there, and hopefully someday maybe her son will also do it. We're really committed to the neighborhood. And that's it.
Thank you for your time and also the restoration. We know that with the home, once you start peeling back layers, there's more to find. So congratulations on your move. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What is the impetus for moving the house?
I'm sorry, what?
Why are you moving the house across the street?
It had to be moved. They said it could not be demolished. It wasn't part of the 7-story, 321-unit project with a 540-car parking garage. And this building was on the corner, and it's my understanding that where the building was will become a park.
So am I understanding that the building is being moved as part of a, like maybe you sold the land to the developer and then you
Right.
moved the building across the street to preserve the home?
That's it.
Okay, fine with me. I've been watching this project go on. I live in the neighborhood and it's kind of exciting. You know, it's a big endeavor. I do have a question for Dennis, though, or maybe Elaine, and that is about the pavers for the driveway. Are pavers appropriate materials for driveways?
I believe what the applicant said was that they'd be used in the parking area. And we do approve pavers for certain parts of site work, such as parking areas.
And would that be in locations that are not visible from the road, or? would
Correct,
that- Okay.
yeah, not such as driveways.
Okay. Thank you. I have no problem with the pavers. I just wanted some clarification.
Thank you, commissioners. If I can ask for a motion. Oh, my apologies. Any other public comments at this time? Seeing none, we would like to close public comment and ask for a motion from the commissioners if possible.
I'll take a stab at this one.
Thank you.
I move to redesignate the property located at 1807 North Morgan Street as a contributing structure and amend the Tampa Heights District Building Inventory and Map because the application does meet the criteria established in the National Register Bulletin number 15 for the following reasons. The first is the property is associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broader patterns of the history of Tampa Heights. Secondly, the property is associated with the lives of persons significant in the past. Thirdly, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type and period or method of construction and represents the work of high artistic values and is distinguishable as a craftsman bungalow within the Tampa Heights Historic District.
Second the motion.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Friendly amendment, that we haven't gotten anything from staff that says it's
Associated with lives of persons significant in the past.
Yes, that's true.
So-
Sorry.
Do you accept that
I
amendment?
accept that amendment.
All right, by,
Do you still second that motion?
Yes, I do.
by a show of hands, if we can approve this motion, and by aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we move forward with the motion of approval. Thank you.
Commissioners, just want to take an opportunity just to pause for a moment and kind of consider the two cases that you just reviewed. One being a public building and the other a private building, but both kind of showing the relationship between the Historic Preservation Commission and the Architectural Review Commissions. The first, you've making a recommendation for landmarking, which pending City Council's approval, that would then go under the jurisdiction of the Architectural Review Commission to monitor any changes in the future that may happen. We're fortunate we have a very considerate and sensitive occupant currently, and down the road, 15 or 20 years, as that building continues its presence, we want to make sure that those improvements that were made are maintained and continue to reflect the character of that building and Davis Islands. And then the second case where you got a building that's located in a local historic district, the Architectural Review Commission considered that request to relocate the structure, and in my experience, that was the best decision for the structure because it maintains its relationship to the residential component of the district as sort of the edge of the district has become more intensified in development. And so, once again, that comes back to the Historic Preservation Commission to ensure that the protective measures are then reapplied to the building upon the relocation. And then subsequent to that, any changes would go back to the Architecture Review Commission. So, this is a very intertwined program. It can't happen though without these owners and agents and applicants. It's definitely a relationship that we try to build with property owners to promote preservation, but they do the heavy lifting. So we're very appreciative, and it allows us to kind of sit here and reflect maybe more independently, application to application, on their challenges and the successes that we can realize together.
Thank you.
I have just a quick comment about that, if that's okay.
We have a comment from staff. Are we open for commissioners to speak? Oh, yes.
Okay. I would just say to your point, Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Schoenbrunn, that this is one of those challenging things where usually moving buildings settings are sometimes frowned upon, but I do think seeing it on the new site really enhances your building, and I know it was a great effort, and I think everyone made good interpretations on this one, including the owner. So I think those are things that it's not always a straight line and a black and white issue. So I think there are a lot of really good decisions being made and good examples.
Can I comment? Yeah. I think these are both great projects because usually the owner is not really behind it. So I think it makes it a lot easier for me to make a decision. I think the gatehouse is beautiful. It's really like simple and elegant, and I really appreciate the work that the police department put into it. And it's interesting, the history about, the developer like disappearing. But I think that's a great example of how the city is like really values the property that they have their work in, So it benefits the neighborhood as a whole. And then with the law practice, I think it's awesome because it's within the district, the national and the local. So it's still within the criteria, and it's a beautiful house. And then also I think when you the owner talked about his daughter and maybe his grandchildren, it's a legacy, So it's like it ties in the house to the neighborhood, but also the people to the house, to the neighborhood. So I think they're both beautiful structures, and I'm really encouraged to see the owners really take part in it. I think it makes it a lot easier to make a decision for it. So thank you.
And just one comment from myself. In regard to 1807 Morgan Street, I think this is a really great project, and I can tell that it took a lot of effort with staff and the construction company and the property owner. But what's really interesting to me here is it contributes to the dynamic nature of the Tampa Heights district, because we have new construction that's coming in that is aligning itself with the design standards as best as possible, but then we're keeping these older structures that really adds that dynamic nature to the district and is a great gateway, I think, and a nice buffer between the downtown and the residential development further to the north. So I think these are great projects.
Thank you, commissioners. We will close discussion and move forward with the agenda.
Thank you, commissioners. Elaine Lund again, Historic Preservation staff. The next item on our agenda this morning is HPC 2023-06. This is a request for a change in status of a contributing structure in the Hyde Park Historic District. For this presentation, the applicant is here, and I will begin with a photo essay, and then we will have the applicant come forward to make the request, and then I will continue with the staff report following his presentation. So the request here is for a change in status from contributing to non-contributing for an accessory structure. So what we're looking at today is it's a residential garage in the Hyde Park Historic District. Is not the primary structure, not the main house that's under consideration, just the garage. This is the location of the property at 1802 West Juton Avenue. This is the 2022 aerial map showing where it is. You can see that it's in the Hyde Park area. Jeton Avenue is just to the north, and it's at the corner at Fremont Avenue, which is the street along the east side of the property. This is the Hyde Park Historic District map, showing you the location of the subject site within the district. Again, the red line shows the outline of the local historic district, and the blue line showing you where the National Register district boundary is. So you can see it's in both the national and the local historic districts. This is the main structure on the property, the residence. I just wanted to show you the main house so you can see the characteristics, the architectural characteristics of the primary structure. It does have craftsman bungalow features. It has the sort of the airplane pop-up second floor, which was originally an open sleeping porch, or a ventilated sleeping porch. This is the north and the east elevation on the photo to the left. So you're looking at it from the corner of Jeton and Fremont. And then we're looking at the rear of the structure in the right photograph, and that's actually an addition to the house that was constructed around 1990. This is the subject building today that we're looking at is the garage, the accessory structure on the property. So the request is for this particular structure. Here we're looking at it on the left. The east elevation is the view from Fremont Avenue. And then the west elevation is interior to the property, so we're looking at that from the backyard. This is the north elevation on the left, so that views also from the backyard area. Noticeable in this picture are the different types of siding that are on this structure. There is a what is called a double OG siding on the west elevation, and on the north elevation, just a clapboard siding, regular horizontal siding. On the south elevation of the building, which you can see from the alley, there is a drop siding or a Dolly Varden siding shown. So the building actually has 3 different types of siding on it. Additionally, the person door that you see there that's on the rear and the garage door, of course, are not original to the structure. Those are more recent additions to the building. Some of the details of the structure here, on that east side of the building, you can see the exposed soffit, and then there's a railing along just above the garage door, which appears that it may have been for sliding doors at some point. You can see in the top right structure the open soffit again with the exposed rafter tails, and then on the bottom picture just a bit of the condition of the building. It sits directly on the ground, on the dirt. And you can see there this close-up of one of the types of siding, again with the corner boards, which are present on all corners of the structure as well. We have some photos of the interior of the building, so you can see the contrast between some of the new framing around the door that was added on the back wall and the original framing of the structure. You can see that in the left picture. In the top right picture, you can see the way a bit of the way the ceiling and then the roof is framed. Note the wall framing, and then the picture on the bottom right. You're looking, if you're standing at the door, you're looking just to your right there, so you can see the back side of the siding there. And that's the end of the photo presentation. So at this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward.
Greetings, if you can state your name and address. I know
Morning,
you're there.
Commissioners. Jim Lloyd with Lloyd Craftsman, representing the homeowners, the Wagamans at 1802 West Jeton Avenue. Just want to start with a little background on myself. I'm a smaller builder. I typically only take on 2 or 3 projects at a time. Been in the business about almost 30 years. Currently worked on 28 Hyde Park historic homes going back to 2011, 15 of which have included accessory buildings. I'm very vested in the neighborhood. 80% of my work is Hyde Park. So asking to change a designation from from contributing to non-contributing is not something that I take lightly. There's going to be discussion about the property contributing to the historic district in a period of significance, essentially, which is up through 1933, 1886 to 1933. So there's a couple of discrepancies with this particular building, mostly determined by the site plan and then the type of materials that we've got that were being used out there. So this is the current site plan showing the location of the garage on the lot and the size of the garage. So the current garage that's there is 19 by 20'3", and it's located on the southeast corner of the lot. This is, I'm just going to kind of go by the individual Sanborn maps here. So let's start with those. This is the 1929 map, and that's showing location of that building in a different spot. This is the 1951 Sanborn map, showing that building in the same location, which is after the period of significance in 1933. You'll notice the size, and compared to, this is actually the lot just to the west. This building is still existing. You'll notice the size there. And also on the 1929 map, same situation. See how the building is narrower front to back, or side to side, than it is front to back, whereas that's more of a square building. This is I had my draftsperson put the Sanborn map into CAD, and we took some dimensions. So you'll see that these are pretty similar. I mean, obviously you're trying to take something from a long time ago and try to scale it out, but when you have the actual size of the lot and you know what the size is on the survey, it's pretty easy to come up with some of these dimensions that are on there. So this is actually within CAD. It's a scaled drawing. So this is 1929 over here. So this building scales out to 10 foot by 20 foot. And the proof you can kind of see, so this is 12 feet to the porch, and then a 55-foot overall length of the building is 67 feet. And it shows the building itself at 26 feet wide. So if you go back to the original survey, or the current survey, you've got a 42.5 foot building, and then 23'6", which is to the actual building itself, not including the porch. You add those two dimensions together, you get 66.1 compared to 67, which is pretty close. The building here shows 26 feet wide. On this current site plan, it's 26 feet wide. So it's a pretty legit comparison of scale, I believe, in my opinion. So if you look at how these two scale, this building is shown here. It's kind of hard to see, but that says 10 feet and that says 20 feet. This one says 13 feet and 20 feet. The building is currently 20 feet deep and 19 feet wide. So it's much wider than what it's shown on the original Sanborn maps. And if you look at the building next to it on the property adjacent, again, it's showing much wider, and I went out and measured this building. This building actually is 20 feet wide, front to back. So it's not like they went out and, you know, the scale was off or something like that. I mean, when they were measuring these, they were trying to make the attempt to show that they were the right size. It's not like they're just saying, oh, well, there's a building there, I'll just sketch it out. So that kind of summarizes the size of the building here versus what the current building is. So there's a discrepancy in terms of, you know, whether, and again, because this, the deal is that the building was supposed to have been built or constructed during the period of significance from 1886 to 1933. So there was a building that was there, but the particular building that's currently there now is a different building than what was originally on the site. So then we'll talk about some of the finishes. These are the three different sidings that are currently on the property. That's the east elevation. That's a Dolly Varden siding. It's a 6-inch siding that's got double laps on it. This is the north elevation that has just a plain lap siding. That's the south elevation, which has a novelty siding. So there's three different types of siding that are on the property. I apologize for having to use my phone. I was having a little printer issue. So I went by and took a look today. And this will show you what's on the original house. So the original house was lap siding, which is typically what you'd see. I mean, normally, again, with my experience with these properties, if you're looking at a contributing accessory structure, it typically will have the same characteristics as the main house. This one does not. So because there could have been, if they demoed the old building, they could have maybe saved some of the siding and then taken that and tried to use it on the new building that was constructed. Obviously, they took whatever siding was laying around and used that to construct the new building. You can see the scale of the trim. Again, typically, you're looking at, that's a 4.5-inch wide. So this is a 4.5-inch wide piece of trim. Typically, in my experience, the same trim that's on the existing house is used on the accessory building. It's also normally not, this is the trim on the existing building. It's over 1 inch thick. A lot of the trim that's on the accessory structure, actually all the trim that's on the accessory structure is 3/4 of an inch thick. So it's a newer material that they've used for the, let me see if I got one here, yeah, that one. So this is one of the corner boards that's on there. Actually, I'm sorry, that's the other. This is the corner board that's on there. So you can see that that's 3/4 of an inch thick, essentially. So it's not the same materials that were potentially on this original building, and it doesn't match what the main structure of the house is. There's going to be some discussion about the the existence of barn doors. Let me see where that photo is. So this is the rail that's currently over the garage door that denotes the fact that there were potentially sliding barn doors that was on the building. But again, this door is 16 feet wide, so I'm not quite sure, unless it was like a side entry garage, I'm not sure how this would have fit on the building that was there. In addition to that, the, again, piece of trim that is behind it is 3/4 of an inch thick. So typically a piece of wood such as, that would be behind this type of apparatus would be 1 inch thick if it's the original material that was used on the, to build the original building. So, let's see what other photos I have. Interior, some of the studs are narrower studs, so they're basically the studs are 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches, which is a new material dimension, not an old material dimension. Typically, they'd be at least 1.75 inches by more than 3.5 inches, because it's a piece of wood that's not been milled down to like what they normally would do today. This is another project that I'm working on as well. That's another piece of trim also, original trim on that house that's showing it's 1 inch thick. Here's a column that's on the house that's showing the material being, again, 1 inch thick. So I think there's some significant discrepancies in terms of the determination of this particular building being the original accessory structure that was on the lot prior to 1933. And it was even showing it in the same location in 1951. So this building was constructed in this location sometime after 1951. There was, in the presentation, Elaine will show you that the garage wasn't shown on the 1976 Sanborn map. The accessory structure was not mentioned on the 83 to 85 Hard Park surveys. It wasn't marked as an existing and contributing structure until 1992. So I don't, with what I'm showing you here, I don't believe that this particular building was the original building to the site. It's got some materials, that were used back then. Even the soffit itself is just a 1x6 soffit. Oops, move that over a little bit. So this is just plain 1x6. The existing house has beadboard. So again, if the roof's been replaced, it's different roof sheeting. The siding is different. The trim boards are different. The garage door is different. The man door in the back is different. It's debatable whether the studs are the original studs to the building. The size is different. So I find it hard to believe that this is the same building that contributed to the significance of the neighborhood prior to 1933. There could be some materials here that were from then, but the building is not the same, and I don't think that this is something that, this is a building that should be contributing to the historic district. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will, for staff response.
Commissioners, Elaine Lund again. I'm going to show you, it's going to take a moment for this file to open because it's a little large, but we'll get this presentation up and we'll go over the staff report for you. There we go. Okay. I'm just going to run through these photos again for you just to refresh your memories from moments ago. Again, this is the east elevation of the structure in question, and the west elevation, looking at it from the street, from Fremont Avenue, and also from the backyard. And then again, just the north and the south elevations, looking at it from the that side in the backyard, and then from the alley as well. These are the photos that I showed you of some of the details. The The applicant did go over some of the detailing with you again and discussed the soffit details and the trim dimensions, as well as the different types of siding on the house, I'm sorry, on the garage. The interior photographs that I showed you, showing the framing and the structure of the garage. And then this is a view comparing the current appearance of the garage from Fremont Avenue to how it looked in 2015 before the driveway was poured. So you can see that it did sit directly on the ground and did not have a slab foundation, and still doesn't have a slab foundation at this time. I'm going to go through the Sanborn maps for you again. This is the 1920s Sanborn map showing the location of the structure and the location of the primary structure has not changed, and then the location of a garage that was shown on the site. You can see that the garage was shown, it's indicated by the word auto there, so you can know it was a garage or an auto house, as a one-story wood frame structure. That was interior to the lot on the west side. And that same structure appears on the 1951 Sanborn map. And then this is the 1976 Sanborn map in which, on which there is no accessory structure, no garage in 1976 shown. We have some aerial photographs. The first one here being from 1957. I hope on your screens you can see this portion of the structure, this portion of the site. This one's particularly fuzzy, but you can sort of make out what appears to be a structure located along the south boundary near the southeast corner of the lot. And this 1965 photo is a little clearer. In 1973, and in 1987, it's a little more apparent at that time that there was something there at that corner of the lot. It's you can see the shade difference on the along the roof line there. So in 1983 and 1984, this is when the Hyde Park Historic District was inventoried for its listing in the National Register of Historic Places. At that time, only the primary structures, only the houses were documented and recorded, and that's all that are included in the National Register of Historic Places listing. In 1989, an inventory was done of all of the accessory structures in the district, and those were then, at that point, in the local historic district, the district was adopted as a local historic district in 1988, and in 1989, the survey for the accessory structures was done. And at that time, the accessory structures were added to the local Hyde Park Historic District. So some are shown as contributing structures on the maps from this point forward. This is a 1989 application for the site plan is from the 1989 application for the addition to the main structure to the house. And at this time, you can see that there was a accessory structure shown on the site plan at the current accessory structures location. Going through the maps for the historic districts, first one is from the 1985 survey of the historic district, showing the primary house on the site in yellow there. It was considered to be contributing, and as alterations were noted, it had been covered in vinyl siding, I believe, and the front porch had been screened in. The contributing but altered structures were shown as altered structures to point out that they would be eligible for the for programs such as the local ad valorem tax exemption program to encourage such rehabilitation of the structures. This is the 1988 map of the local historic district. All of the contributing and contributing altered structures are shown as contributing on the 1988 map. This is the map that was used during the adoption of the local historic district. And this is the 1992 update to the local historic district map. You can see in our files we have no maps that are available prior to 1992, unfortunately, but we do have this one from that year showing the accessory structures on the site, and you can see some are shown in heavy black line or as contributing structures, such as the one here at 1802 Jeton. In the updates that we have since then, we have an updated map in 2009 and an updated map from 2017, both showing the accessory structure as contributing to the local historic district. So our findings, generally, to summarize them, are that both the house and the accessory structure appear to have been constructed during the historic district's period of significance from 1886 to 1933. The garage has characteristics of structures built during the district's period of significance. And while the house was identified in the initial 85 nomination for the National Register listing, the garage was identified in the 1989 local survey of contributing accessory structures. And the garage has been shown as contributing on all of the maps for the historic district since that time. So its classification has been consistent throughout its documentation. The evidence that we have is that the characteristics of the building are consistent with the construction methods and the design elements present in similar buildings constructed within the Hyde Park Historic District. And while the garage may not be original to the site and does not appear to be the same one that was previously located on this site, it may have been relocated from another place within the historic district, from a nearby location, or it may have been constructed off-site and brought on-site sometime from the 1950s on, but it was still consistent with construction methods and a style that are consistent with the district and with the primary structure. So the staff recommendation will be that the accessory structure should retain its status as contributing to the Hyde Park Historic District. The owner did submit the application for the building within the historic district to change its status from contributing to non-contributing. That application was complete in accordance with the criteria in section 27261C. That 27261 of the city's Code of Ordinances directs us to look at National Register Bulletin 15 to determine whether or not the building contributes to the integrity of the Hyde Park Historic District. And we find that it has consistent characteristics with structures built within the period of significance. It embodies distinctive characteristics of the type of architecture represented through Hyde Park, and it's consistent with the architectural characteristics of the primary structure on site. And it maintains historic relationships to site and setting as it has since its evaluation in 1989. So therefore, our recommendation is that since no significant alterations have been made to the garage since its initial classification, that it continues to contribute to the local Hyde Park Historic District. And therefore, it still meets the criteria used to determine its contributing status. So the action requested of you today is to approve or deny this particular request to change the status of the garage from contributing to non-contributing.
Thank you.
Good morning, once again, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architects Review and Historic Preservation Manager. I wanted to just provide a little context. It was a very thorough presentation by, I think, both the applicant and the staff. Your role this morning in applying National Register Bulletin number 15 to determine the contributing status or the ability to change status is a significant one because the staff does rely on the existing building inventory very heavily in making its decisions as to whether structures are protected or not protected under the historic preservation ordinances. A couple things that I just kind of want to share as kind of being in this role for quite a long time and seeing a lot of different scenarios with structures throughout the city is that there are situations throughout Hyde Park and through all the historic districts where accessory structures were built either before or even after or before a principal structure was constructed. We have examples where the accessory structure was constructed and a principal structure was never constructed. If you recall, last time we met in May, you looked at a redesignation of a relocated structure in Hyde Park where there was an existing contributing accessory structure, but then the principal structure had been built in the 1950s and was non-contributing. And then that acted as the receiving site for a contributing structure. So at the end, those two structures, although both contributing, were not necessarily original to the site. In looking at this, I think, Elaine and I discussed this quite a bit, and we certainly want to have an objective mindset when we look at all applications. But having been involved in many, many cases where buildings have been relocated, often sort of off the grid where there's not many records of it, we've seen structures appear on sites where they don't necessarily exist on the resource materials that we typically reference. So we did look heavily at the construction methods. And although there are some replacement materials, which we see pretty much throughout the district, I mean, once we get into the 60s, we start seeing the change to nominal dimensions. That doesn't necessarily negate the fact that a large part of the structure is dimensional lumber and built in the same techniques that we see within structures that are built in the 1920s and within the period of significance for Hyde Park. Some of the changes to the structures, I mean, if we're looking at the documentation of the strictly of the Sanborn maps, if there was a structure that was built in the 1970s, it wouldn't be constructed like that structure is. They wouldn't have used Dolly Varden siding. They wouldn't have used most likely that architectural style. So there's a lot of sleuth work that you have to kind of consider in sort of picking this apart. But at the end of the day, going back to National Register Bulletin number 15, the portion dealing with when a structure was constructed is only part of the consideration of which structures actually contribute to the historic fabric of a neighborhood. So it's not an easy task. We try not to bring, we try to bring you as much information and not, introduce conjecture, but it is something that we think we've provided you all the information that we can as a staff, and I think the applicant, in good faith, has tried to act in his client's behalf to provide you the information that they have. There is, I want to just remind the commission of its role, that this is a determination of essentially eligibility for contributing status. It's not a structural evaluation. It's not an architectural rehabilitation exercise. That jurisdiction is for the Architecture Review Commission. if there was going to be changes to the structure subsequent, to modify it or bring it back more towards a unified historic architectural type. That happens at the Architecture Review Commission. If the applicant wanted to make a request for demolition based on the fact that there's structural defects or an economic hardship, that would be done at the Architecture Review Commission. Your role is strictly to determine if it qualifies as a contributing structure, adding to the context of the historic district as it did originally when the inventory was conducted.
Thank you. All right. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. All right, seeing none, we will close it in open discussion amongst the commissioners.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Oh, commissioners.
I have a few questions of the staff. I assume that there was I probably know the answer to this question, but that there was a research done to see if any permits had been issued on this property?
Correct, and we have permits going back through the 1980s, but nothing prior to that, so we do not have anything before 1989 permit-wise that would show anything regarding this particular structure.
I have a follow-up question. The way the property, the main structure is located on the property, it would indicate to me that there probably originally had been a driveway that came off Jeton on the western side of the property, so not on the corner side, the interior portion of the lot. That makes sense to me when I look at the Sanborn map and the shape of the original building, let's call it that, the auto storage, the garage. Is there any indication now that there was a driveway or a curb cut?
I do not believe so. I mean, not from the
I couldn't tell from
yeah,
the
not
photos or
from
anything.
the Jeton Avenue side. No, it may have also
Because-
been accessed from the alley. However,
Yes, it could have come in from the alley, but that's not the typical pattern of driveways in the Hyde Park Historic District, particularly on this side of Rome. Most of them, as you know, come off the main street, which is why the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the location of the present structure seems odd to me. Not saying that it isn't historic, I'm just saying it just doesn't conform to the typical patterns of accessory structures in the historic district in this particular part. I would have expected to see a driveway cut. And that's it for me for now. Thanks.
So there's never been an actual evaluation apart from the maps of this structure? Like, apart from the fact that it was colored in versus not colored in, it was never formally sort of in a written evaluation?
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing at the Florida Master Site Files?
correct. It's not included separately in the site file.
And I just have, I think the applicant raises some good points regarding the integrity of materials, which, the setting is, there's integrity of setting and location, but it seems like there's a pretty substantial loss of integrity of materials to me. The doors, the windows, the siding.
Even if there was evidence that finally showed this garage showing up from our notes, it appears that in 1989, it would have been the first time that this structure showed up on anybody's map anywhere, regardless of how it was constructed. And it, by definition, historic structures are 50 years old or older. And that mathematically doesn't jive in my mind that once this structure finally did show up somewhere, and it's clear from the evidence that prior to that 1989 date, the accessory structure was never noted or designated on a map or even commented that it was there. So if that's the case, then it wouldn't qualify by that one definition alone, regardless of materials and construction and so on. So, and it may be that it is an error on the part of the folks who did these surveys and did the maps, but all we have to go by is what is shown on the evidence presented and not what we think might have been there or could have been there. So I think we all need to kind of keep that in the back of our mind as we consider this.
Go ahead.
The other thing is, in preservation, the Sanborn map, as you know, is the holy grail. And it just struck me that the 1976 Sanborn did not show any structure, any accessory structure on the property. And that to me is a significant hurdle, more than even some of the materials, you know, lots of different materials are put on old buildings, new buildings. That one doesn't strike a chord with me as much as the fact that it's not on the Sanborn. And that would have been a very large omission. And the Sanborns are actually, from a scale perspective, are generally very accurate. They're very carefully drawn maps. So to me, that just raises a huge red flag as to whether or not, it's just something that we rely on as preservation, is everybody looks at the Sanborns. We go through history, it's the layers, you can see the changes in the property. And I'm not saying that this couldn't be an error, you know, it's possible, but in my view, highly unlikely.
The aerial photography evidence is pretty convincing to me that something was there in the 50s and 60s. So I'm focused less on the timing, as more on the materials. I think if we had a house that had plastic doors, change of siding, change of windows, I would be saying it was probably, didn't have the integrity. But
All right, any other? Yeah, just a question, Elaine. You mentioned that there was a time period in which accessory dwellings were not shown on the Sanborn maps. Did I hear that correctly?
No, I believe there was only the time in which they were not shown on the district maps.
On the district maps, okay. Okay, thanks.
I understand the need for an official action because they were, they appeared eventually on the local district maps. But I too have a problem with not only the period of significance, but even if it wasn't a period, when I drove by it, I saw at least 2 sightings. I hadn't noticed the third one, and the door, barn door rail and some other things. So I do have an issue with the integrity regardless of when it was there.
Yeah. I think I'm similar with me too, because the structure was originally closer to the house on the other side, and then it was moved lower, and it's not the same scale as the other one, as the original one. So then it's like, when was it added, and what is the significance of Hyde Park again, the period of significance again?
It's 1886 to 1933.
Okay. So then that was done, it was moved after 1933. And so that's concerning. And then the fact that when the original maps were drawn, or when the district was drawn up in 1985, the accessory structures were not included, but then it was included in 1992. But from the comment that was said earlier, that the individual accessories were not examined. It was just included. So we don't know what the condition of the buildings were. If it wasn't individually examined, then I don't know if it was actually built during the period of significance because somebody would have had to look at it. So that's also something that I was thinking of.
And just for my clarification for me, with contributing structures, how many of those attachments are contributing now in Hyde Park? I know for this property, it seems to be around 1992 is when it was showing up, but as far as Hyde Park, okay, let me rephrase that. How many contributing accessory dwellings are in Hyde Park?
Unfortunately, I don't have that number.
Or a rough percentage.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the accessory structures that are shown on the maps, more than 50% of them are contributing. Yeah, 700?
That was my only question. Any other commissioners? Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, since there are several questions, since there were several questions of staff, I'd ask that you have the applicant see if he has any follow-up conclusions or remarks based on the questions the commissioners had of staff.
Yes, sir, if you could return back, if you have any other questions
Or follow-up conclusions.
or comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that kind of struck me with the conversations that have been going on, you know, is that I'm trying to find the exact wording. Just because it was in that section 15 there that that's what I highlighted it before. The property is not eligible, however, if it retains some basic features conveying massing, but has lost the majority of the features that once characterized its style.
Can you cite where you are reading from, please?
Sorry, it's under criterion C, historic, the second, the last sentence in that is the property. Page 3, this is on the report. And then actually, in the paragraph prior to that, defining the essential physical features, property must retain the essential features that enable it to convey its historic identity. And that it's, you know, my comment will be that it's been substantially altered since the period of the district's significance. So just showing that, you know, the man door's been replaced, the garage door's been replaced, the roof's been replaced, the corner boards have been replaced, the siding, I mean, it's hard for me. I mean, I know, you know, is all of the siding potentially a historic siding? Yes, but normally it would be the same siding. You know, again, with my experience, I've done many of these. I mean, we try very hard to salvage stuff. So if we're gonna rebuild a building like this, we're gonna try to salvage it. Maybe they didn't care as much back in the 70s or 60s whenever this got done. So they just, again, I feel like somebody just kind of threw whatever was laying around and put that up on the building and said, hey, it's historic. So that's kind of my contention, is that I don't think there's enough here that proves that this is still a contributing structure to the historic district in the period of significance from 1886 to 1933.
I just have a question for you.
Sure.
What about the structural integrity of this building as it sits right now?
It's not spectacular. I mean, you know, there's been, the homeowners purchased the property, I want to say 3 years ago, and did some work. They renovated the primary structure. They did have some support work done in the accessory building. I mean, it's, you know, I think most of what's in there structurally now is new stuff. I mean, there's, you know, again, I don't take this lightly. Like, this is a big deal to me. So, but just in seeing it and seeing what this building is, I don't see enough of this building contributing to what was done back then for us to be able to say that it's something that needs to stick around.
And just keep in mind, commissioners, we're not here for the integrity of the building. This is just here for the contributing and non-contributing. I know it may answer a question, but it's not for the. It's structural.
Right.
Thank you.
Understood. Okay, so I have another question, and
Sure.
Again, that may be outside of the purview here, but correct me if you need to. What is the intent here? Is the intent to demolish this building?
So that is, we're just
Okay.
clear about.
And I do encourage you, go over your staff notes there. There's a lot of information there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Would it be unusual to have the barn door go all the way across? Because, like, I've got a barn door on my historic garage, and
Only halfway, because that's a lot of weight on the, I don't often see them going all the way across.
Is that what you asked?
I'm asking staff, yeah. Makes me, yeah.
I mean, once again, Dennis Fernandez with the staff. We've seen both, there's all different types of options that we see, but we do see different operational functions for some of these sliding doors. I mean, I think the fact that it has the railing indicates that,
Yeah, that's
you
just a
know,
lot of weight. with
that's,
two doors.
you know, that probably it could have had a secondary door somewhere, or a fixed door. Little hard to determine. The photo that we have of it before it was modified appears to show that there was some type of door in place, but a little difficult to see with the pixelation.
Any other questions from the commissioner? If I can ask for a motion at this time.
Excuse me, Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the legal department. I do, as I previously provided the commissioner's sample motions, I do want to direct your attention to whether or not the commissioners decide to approve the request or deny the request, that your approval or denial should be specifically to the accessory structure and not to the property as a whole, but specifically to the accessory structure, because that's what this application is regarding. At the top, you'll see that it says property, but please focus your motion on the accessory structure.
I can take a stab at a motion if you're ready. I move to approve the request to change the status of the accessory structure located at 1802 West Jatan Avenue from contributing to non-contributing because the application does not meet the criteria established in the National Register Bulletin number 15 for the following reasons. It is unclear whether the period of significance of the structure or whether the construction of the structure was within the period of significance. The building no longer has integrity to its original materials. It has 3 different types of sidings on 3 sides. The door, overhead door, is new. It appears that there was once a barn door or a sliding door, and there's a new roof. There are several materials and construction types that are different, and therefore the integrity is not the same as it was historically. And I believe that is sufficient, unless I'm told otherwise.
I'd like to add, excuse me, a minor amendment that the garage does not appear to be original to this location on the property. And the Sanborn maps show inconsistency with the progression of the location of accessory structures on that property.
Do you accept that amendment?
Can I add that, half of that the Sanborn maps do not appear to be consistent in showing this building in the location or the size that it is in the existing condition?
Fine.
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Those all in favor of the motion, say aye and raise a hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, we move forward with the approval. Thank you. Moving forward with the updates.
For our final item on the agenda this morning, I do have an update of some of the activities going on with the East Tampa Memorial Park Cemetery resources that we've been discussing in the last few meetings. Just a few slides to kind of help us along that overview. Just as a reminder, and for those that may have not been participating in our hearings in the past, the East Tampa neighborhood is a very large neighborhood in the eastern part of our city. Essentially, this map shows the boundaries of the community redevelopment area in blue, and that area is composed of different neighborhoods from the East Tampa area, situated to the east of I-275 and the north of I-4 generally. So last we met, I was preparing to attend a meeting with the East Tampa Community Advisory Committee, which did occur. I did attend that meeting in June, on June 6th, and presented a pretty thorough PowerPoint overview of our program and some of the opportunities similar to what I presented to the Commission in the past, mainly focusing in on the designation and recognition of historic resources in the East Tampa area. It was well attended. I think there was probably about 50 individuals that were there, and there was some discussion from the committee that followed. There was particular interest in Memorial Park Cemetery, obviously, that had just recently transferred ownership to the city. So there was a lot of discussion about what was planned for the cemetery, and we've been coordinating both with the public, some of which were in attendance at this meeting, and others that have kind of formed groups that are promoting the preservation of the cemetery, and gathering information and hopefully kind of leveraging our effort to bring some protection and improvements to the cemetery itself. At that meeting, I did obviously pass out a lot of business cards and provide our general contact information. There was a discussion sort of after the fact from some individuals that had interest with buildings that they were familiar with, and were going to kind of get back with me. I haven't actually had that contact as of yet, but I expect that it's going to be forthcoming the more that we continue to interact with the community there. I had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and I know that this was a central discussion point for the recognition of East Tampa and some of the other African American resources that are either designated or undesignated, is to bring recognition and kind of celebrate the heritage of those as we do with our other historic resources. And so the most current ones that we're dealing with for the historic markers are the Scrub and the Jackson House markers, which are being dedicated this week, as I mentioned. There have been some other ones that have been recently installed, and there's a number of additional ones that are sort of being considered but haven't been approved yet. So the College Hill Cemetery marker was installed in 2022. That is just on the east side of the Italian Club Cemetery as it exists today, and the marker's present if anyone attended that dedication. I'm not sure, but it's present if you wanted to go see that today. The Zion Cemetery marker was approved by the Hillsborough County Advisory Committee as well. I sit on that committee, so I am kind of participating in these discussions on a, on a basis as the applications are presented to us by their staff. The marker has not been approved by the Zion Cemetery Preservation and Maintenance Society. They've been working on some of the text of how they want the marker to read. So the financing has been approved, and we're still pending the text and the location that they'd like that installed. And then other markers that have been recently approved and still are sort of in the development stage of either text or fabrication are the Memorial Park Cemetery marker, one for Blake High School, and then another for Rogers Park Golf Course. So those are sort of the current inventory of markers, and then, as I said, there's additional ones that are coming down the pipe.
Dennis, may I ask a question,
Sure.
please? Are the historic markers, the locations of those, are those included on the website for your division?
We have a link to those on our website. There's an entire inventory for the state where you can go by county and determine, see what has been installed and where they're located. So we kind of, our staff, particularly our archives and record staff, is really diligent about kind of keeping those up, because sometimes they get hit by cars and sometimes they need repairs, and so sometimes they're offline for a little bit, but there's funding for repairs and maintenance that are part of the program as well. As you recall, the Johnson Brothers houses, which were recommended for local designation by this committee at our last hearing, we are scheduled to bring those to City Council on August 24th for their consideration. So we're in the process of preparing to notice for those hearings. And so actually the scrub marker that I just discussed is going to be, or actually is installed in front of these two structures. So it gives you sort of a real world experience of the housing type that were in the scrub. And then the Memorial Park Cemetery, we've been working on progressing with the local landmark designation of this. As you know, it was acquired by the city. It's been going through a number of efforts internally with the city to try to really determine the records. Record keeping was very poor on the cemetery, so there's a lot of work going into determining where there are burials and what areas may not have burials. There's also individuals in the public who own plots, but yet the record keeping doesn't really, determine that. So the city's working very diligently on that and coordinating with outside experts to try to get some sort of control on that. From the role that we're taking, creating the path to local designation, we did process the application for designation, similar to how we had to process the one for the Davis Islands Marina a few months ago. So the application's been processed and signed by the mayor to allow for the designation of the city-owned property. We had to, of course, wait till all the documents and closing for that to occur. Now we're conducting the staff research that goes into all of the designations, creating the legal description, coordinating with outside agencies to determine the extent of the boundaries that we establish, and then also coordinating with the public to try to gather information that they may have to add to the composition of the designation report. Once we have that complete, there's going to be another hearing, as there was today, for a recommendation by the HPC. We'll notice for that. Currently, our plan is to bring that at your next meeting on September 19th. So we'll be noticing in August for that. And then contingent on your recommendation, there's the need to get the concurrence of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, and then also 2 public hearings at City Council. So we feel that we're making good progress, kind of checking off the more code-required aspects of the process, but also engaging the public and trying to gather information and, expand sort of the context of what the designation means for the community. And that concludes my update for East Tampa and Memorial Park Cemetery. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Yes, thank you, Dennis, for the update. I actually do have a question in regards to the Jackson House and also the City of Tampa. I guess they go together. City of Tampa, the pamphlet that you gave out earlier. I do want to encourage people that when you stop by this week to check out the Soul Walk on Thursday, I know it may not be held at the Jackson House, but stop by the Jackson House because it prompts my next question. In the last meeting, Commissioner Shoecraft mentioned about the concerns of the structure and integrity of the Jackson House. And I know that I was hoping we can get a more updated insight on where the city stands with that request from Commissioner Shoecraft on how, what's going on with the easement. I know that Mr. Drumgo came in back in May to give us an update. And I rode by again this past weekend and more pieces have fallen from the Jackson House. So I was seeing if there's any type of update, or does the city have any type of mechanism put in place to make sure, because again, we're in storm season and we just had a nice gust of wind last night, and I do not want to lose that building to the elements. So if we can provide an update, I would really like that.
I don't currently have an update other than what Mr. Drumgo, provided last time. I think that, the negotiations with the adjacent property owner are crucial, as he had mentioned, and those are still ongoing. So I don't want to add any conjecture to the discussion, but I think the situation everybody understands is, very important, but we have to, secure that component. So I can certainly check with him and provide an update for you at the next hearing, but I don't have anything other than the information I gave you today.
All right, thank you. All right.
I have a quick question. Did you say something was happening in August? What was
There'll be some noticing that
Okay.
occurs in August. That's going to go out more towards surrounding property owners of some of the properties that we've been talking about, but not a hearing or of any type for this commission.
Now we'll be moving on to new business.
But the staff has no new business to offer. I don't know if the commission had any suggestions.
All right. At this time, I would like a motion from the commissioners to receive and file submitted documents or exhibits if there are any.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, yes. Can we take a vote for those approval of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, we will recommend the approval. Also, we want to take in consideration the next meeting date, which is September 19th, 2023. And at the time, we would like to conclude this meeting for July 11th. The time is 10:49 a.m. Have a good day.